Hey everyone, I'm going to jump right in there with part two of Hate That Cat. I hope you enjoyed Hate That Cat. And if you haven't already watched it, I also read Sharon Creech's Love That Dog, and this is kind of the companion novel to it. Alrighty, and when we last stopped, Jack is, well, we discovered that his mother is hearing impaired. She talks with her hand a lot. He loves her. He was comparing her to a chair, and then he said, "Oh, she's not like a chair. She's not plump like a chair." And he also got some letters, received some letters for Walter Dean Myers, which is awesome. Who is a famous author and poet. And if you've read Love That Dog, you'll know what I'm talking about. All righty. So without further ado, we're on February 25th. And I guess I should have pronounced the author's name is Walter Dean Meyer. So that's so exciting that out of the blue, he got a letter from him. So isn't that cool to get any kind of letter is exciting. All right, back to part two, February 25th. Here we go. Today the fat black cat up in the tree by the bus stop dropped a nut on my head. Thunk. And when I yelled at it, that fat black cat said, "Murr me murr," in a nasty, spiteful way. I hate that cat. And if it's been a week since you've watched the first one, so remember that he doesn't like cats. And he tried to help this cat out one time, and the cat fell out of the tree and scratched him all up. And ever since then, he's been afraid of cats. So his parents eventually gave him a little black kitten for Christmas. So hopefully he's outgrowing his fear of cats. All righty, February 28th. I am getting a little worried about poor Mr. William Carlos Williams. Is he alive? He always asks that about the poems and authors he's learned about. I mean, first there was the poem about the red wheelbarrow and the chicky chickens, and it's true, I like that poem now. It grows on you. But those two poems about the plums, and he's got exclamation marks and question marks. I think Caitlin was crying because she felt stupid. And to tell you the truth, I felt stupid too. Because even though those were nice little thingies that Mr. William Carlos Williams said about the sweet plums and the old lady, and even though I could see little pictures in my mind when you were reading the plum poems, it would be very, very hard to explain to my Uncle Bill why those poems are not little notes scribbled on scrap paper. And did you notice that Mr. William Carlos Williams does not use much in the way of alliteration? Remember that word, words that sound like they're consonants, like kick a kettle in a king's kerchew, or pick a pickle eater? I'm just making these off the top of my head. So when you're repeating consonants, and Jack has learned about that, or onomatopoeia, words that sound like their meanings, like buzz, crack, drum, hush. Or simile, comparing two things using like or as, my room is like a pigsty. Or metaphor, take out the like or as, my room is a pigsty. Did you notice that? So he's noticing that you can write a poem and not use any alliteration or onomatopoeia or similes or metaphors. You can or you can't. It's up to you. You don't have to rhyme in poetry.
Teachers, I just wanted to let you know that I did just put in your mailbox.
And I'm going to pause this for a second. Pardon that interruption there. So he's learning that in poetry, you can break the rules. It isn't like regular writing, prose writing, in which you have to follow certain punctuation and capitalization. You can totally write poems that do not rhyme or do not have alliteration or onomatopoeia. March 6th. This morning, I left a note from my mother. This is just to say, I have eaten the pudding that was in the fridge and which you were maybe saving for dessert. Forgive me, it was so yum, so thick, so creamy. March 7th. Those non-poems of Cuckoo Mr. William Carlos Williams are running in my head. So now he's writing a poem. He's inspired Jack to write a poem. Mom in the Kitchen is the title of this poem. Inspired by Mr. Carlos Williams by Jack. Crunching on a pickle in the middle of the room, juice running down her arm. It tastes good to her. It tastes good to her. It tastes good to her. You can tell by the way she closes her eyes and licks her lips, and then her arm, refreshed, a song of dill pickles, filling the air. It tastes good to her. March 13th. I like that poem, by the way. I love how descriptive it was. Did you like it? I'd love to hear. I can't wait to hear from you. March 13th. You know what? Today in the library, I found some more poems by Mr. William Carlos Williams. And do you know that what he wrote? A poem about a cat. A cat. The title is Poem. Is Mr. William Carlos Williams a little lazy? And it is only about a cat climbing over a jam closet. What is a jam closet? And into a flower pot. That was Jack's question. What is a jam closet? Maybe we'll find out. That is it. That is the poem. But as soon as I read it, I saw in my head, Skitter McKitter, my black kitten. So here is a non-poem about her. Non-poem inspired by lazy Mr. William Carlos Williams by Jack. As the kitten leaped over the pot of blue violets, first the front paws gracefully, then the hind paws a landing into the bottom of the kitchen sink. All righty, that's a poem. Notice at the bottom, he has note. If Mr. William WCW doesn't have to think of a title, I don't either, right? So he called it non-poem. March 14th, another non-poem inspired by Mr. William Carlos Williams by Jack. The fat black cat crouched on a limb of the maple tree, needle claws scratching the bark, menacingly, then the tail whacking at the branch in warning. March 21st, just as I expected, my Uncle Bill is not a big fan of Mr. William Carlos Williams. Uncle Bill says Mr. WCW, if you remember his uncle is a professor at a college and he told him that poems had to rhyme, which is not true. So now he shared this with Uncle Bill. Uncle Bill says Mr. WCW is a minor poet and a faux poet. Later, my dad explained he meant faux, F-A-U-X, which means fake. Wow, he's calling him a fake poet. And I said, what about the So Much Depends Upon poem, the one about the red wheelbarrow? And the plum poems, which are stuck in my head and I can say them from memory. And Uncle Bill said, overrated, highly overrated. And I found myself sticking up for poor Mr. William Carlos Williams and the small ordinary things he writes about and the small ordinary moments that you don't notice until you read his poems. And Uncle Bill said, small things, small moments, give me large things, large moments. Give me poems about death and dying and about war and tragedy and philosophical metaphors. Philosophical metaphors. Give me sonnets. Give me odes. Now, a sonnet is a 14-line poem with 3 stanzas and a couplet. You'll learn about sonnets someday. They're very sophisticated and they have to rhyme. And they're great, but poems don't have to be like that, do they? An ode is like a eulogy or a tribute to something or someone. Blah, blah, blah. The only interesting thing he said while he was visiting was that he is allergic to cats. Aw. And he sneezed a lot just to prove it. And he made us lock Skitter McKitter in my room. And when he left, my dad said 2 things. First, sometimes I envy your mom not being able to hear. Ooh, sounds like he doesn't like Uncle Bill too well because he's getting sick of maybe Uncle Bill's talking. And second, if Uncle Bill is allergic to cats, maybe he won't be able to visit us anymore. Oh, well. March 26th. 6th. This is just to say that Skitter McKitter has run away. And maybe Uncle Bill would say this is not a tragedy, but in our house, it is a tragedy. Oh my goodness, that's awful. You know, he finally was worked up the bravery, the courage to have a cat again. And he loves this cat and has run away. Oh, I hope this book has a happy ending. March 27th. How can you go from hating cats to loving one cat in particular? One black cat, one skitter-makitter cat who chases a brown nut across the wood floor and who trails balls of string over chairs and under tables and who falls over backwards when she is swatting at a plant and who leaps in your lap and purrs and who sleeps on your pillow curled behind your head with one paw in your ear and who crawls under the covers to nip at your toes. How can you love a little cat so much in such a short time? He loves his cat now, doesn't he? March 28th. Last night my mother signed the word cat, which would be C-A-T for the letters, or she has the sign for cat, which is probably what she used, and then tapped her heart, hard, soft, hard, soft, hard, soft. He loves his mother, doesn't he? March 31st. Still no skitter-makitter. We think she got out when the plumber left the door open. I keep thinking about Mr. Christopher Myers' roaming cat and the person in the poem story who says over and over, "Where's your home? Where do you go?" There's a big emptiness in our house, just like there was when my dog Sky died. We've looked everywhere. We've called Skitter's name. We put out bowls of milk, but the only cat who slurps the milk is that other black cat, that mean, fat black cat that scratched me. I saw it creeping away from the milk bowl, licking its chin, lazy, waddling cat, flicking its proud tail. I hate that cat. Aw. That's the only cat he sees, the one he's really afraid of that scratched him. I so hope he finds Skitter. And more bad news. Yesterday I received a postcard from Mr. Walter Dean Myers. It is Myers with an S. I was right the first time. And on it he said that his cat died. Because he got the postcard from him and they heard him back and said, "What's the name of your cat?" And he said his cat died. He said his cat was old and had lived a good long life, but that he misses his cat. I know what he means. Keep your doors closed so your cats do not get out. And if you have any old cats, take good care of them. April 2nd. Skitter-makitter, here is your home. Why did you go? April 11th. Wow, we're scurrying along the school year here. So much depends upon a black cat mewing outside your back door. Yes, Skitter-makitter is back. I heard scratching and then howling, but it didn't sound like Skitter. When I opened the door, there was the fat black cat making a ruckus, and then I heard a softer mewing, kitten mewing, Skitter mewing, and lying there beside the door was Skitter-makitter, looking thin and bedraggled and a gash on one ear and a clump of fur missing, oh no, from her neck. And when I went to reach for Skitter, the fat black cat put out a paw out protectively and licked Skitter's ear and then nudged Skitter up and into my hands. Aw! And then the fat black cat sat there very still, silent, as I carried Skitter inside. I left the door open in case the fat black cat wanted to come inside too, but instead the fat black cat turned and walked away, whisking its fat black tail. Whisk, whisk. I think the fat black cat found Skitter-makitter and saved her and brought her home. I'm very sorry. I'm sorry I hated that cat. When I held Skitter in my lap and petted her, she licked my hand. She licked it and licked it and licked it. It tasted good to her. It tasted good to her. It tasted good to her. And Jack says that 3 times. Apparently, the cat tastes really great to her. She licked my hand. Sorry. His hand tastes so good to Skitter. I'm Skitter-makitter. And I don't know about you, but I'm so happy that Skitter is home. Maybe this book can end happily. April 18th, new poem called The Kitten, inspired by, this time, Mr. Alfred Lloyd Tennyson by Jack. She pats the package with padded paws and pulls apart the golden gauze with her tiny furry jaws. Then, like an acrobat, she leaps legs and ribbons in a heap, tangled round and tangled deep. Oh, I love that poem. Very descriptive. And it has a certain quality, a certain tone to it, I think. April 25th, The Purr, new poem, inspired by Mr. Edgar Allan Poe, and My New Thesaurus by Jack. And a thesaurus If you don't know, is like a dictionary, only you look up the word and instead of telling you the meaning, it gives you synonyms, other words. So you don't use words over and over and over. Like you're saying good a lot or nice or sweet. Look it up and find a different word. So he's using the thesaurus, and it's inspired by Edgar Allan Poe, who is the inventor of detective stories and scary stories. He also wrote lots and lots of poems. His poems really often do rhyme and have a certain meter and rhythm to it. But enough of that. Here we go. The purr. Hear the kitten with her purr, humming purr. What a contagious contentment her vibrations spur. How she hums, keeping time, in a sort of thrumming rhyme, to the murmulation of the thrums and the hums of her purr, 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 of the humming and the thrumming of her purr. May 2nd. Thank you for showing me all the books of cat poems and all the books that tell a story in poems. I never knew a writer could do that, tell a whole story in poems. I already read the one by Mr. Robert Cormier, Alive. And next by my bed is The Dust Book by Miss Karen Hess, Alive. And underneath that one is the Essie and Amber one by Miss Vera B. Williams. And you guessed it, his question is, alive? You know, he could always Google that to find out the answer, couldn't he? And on my bulletin board is a list you gave me of so many poets whose books I can read. And also on my bulletin board is the funny poem Picture of the Cat Chair by Mr. Chris Rashka, Alive. And that poem by Mr. Lee Bennett Hopkins, Alive, about growing up to be a writer. I now have a treasure of words in my room. And I love it that he's loving to read and write poems and read books about poetry, poem books, poetry books. I'm loving it. May 5th. This is called Silent Sounds of Mom, inspired by Mr. Edgar Allan Poe by Jack. See her hands in the air, waving here, waving there. What flickering formations, alliteration. Those compositions dare. How she sings in a swish and a bound, bringing sound to the silence of the air, to the silent tabulation of the hush and the hums of the air, of the humming and the hushing of the air. May 9th, Poets' Day. It was grandilicious finding pictures of so many poets and putting them on the wall in our classroom, all those poets looking back at us, and beside them some of their poems, so many words and images in our heads. And although I wish they were all alive and that Dwayne hadn't written dead next to the dead ones, their words are all still there waiting for someone to read them, those ineffable words thrumming like purring in our heads. Love That Cat, May 16th. Inspired by Mr. Walter Dean Myers by Jack. I'm glad he's writing poems like Love That Cat instead of Hate That Cat. Love that cat like a bird loves to twitter. I said I love that cat like a bird loves to twitter. Love to call her in the morning, love to call her, hey there, Skitter, McKitter. May 19th. The fat black cat has been coming to our back door. Meow, she says, as if asking a question. I pour milk in the bowl and the fat black cat slurps, and then sits back staring at me, her tail slapping slowly on the ground. Shish, shish, murr. Skitter skitters up and leaps forward, her front paws occasionally landing in the bowl, and the fat black cat licks the top of Skitter's head and then turns and saunters away, apparently satisfied. May 23rd. Thank you for saying more nice things about me to my parents. Last night when we read our poems at school. That's so cool. And the teacher's complimenting Jack and his parents are coming in and reading the poems. Woo! My mother doesn't usually come to these things because she can't hear what's going on. But when you said I could sign for her, this is what she said, sign to me. I love that, Miss Stretchberry. And although I was embarrassed to stand up in front of everyone and sign all those words for my mother, too many eyes on me, and it was very hard to keep up with everyone speaking so fast. When I saw my mother's face, it felt good to me, it felt good to me, it felt good to me. And even when he writes anything, he sounds like a poet. Definitely sounds like a writer. June 5th, this is just to say. I will listen for you. I will hear all the sounds in the world, all the delicious, ineffable sounds, all the thumbing and humming and tintinnabulating sounds. I will hear all the sounds in the world, and I will write them down so you can hear them too. To his mother, I'm sure that entry was written for. And the next page says, some of the poems used by Miss Stretchberry. Love That Boy by Walter Dean Myers. So I'm sure she had that up on the wall for open house. Love that boy like a rabbit loves to run. I said, I love that boy like a rabbit loves to run. Love to call him in the morning. Love to call him, hey there, son. And the rest of the book shares poems, and we're learning a little bit more about what he alluded to. That was the ending back there when the mother came and he signed for her. And maybe it didn't seem like an ending conclusion, but it was, because it's happy, and he's got his cat and his mom, and he's making his mom happy. I'm loving it. And he's got confidence. And then the rest of the book, there's Love That Dog. Love that dog like a bird loves to fly. I said I love that dog like a bird loves to fly. Love to call him in the morning. Love to call him, hey there, Sky. And you remember in the first book, he didn't want to talk about Sky, did he? And now he's, changing poems about his and making them based on his dog. So there really is a lot of closure here. And there is the poem again, My Yellow Dog. My Yellow Dog by Jack. My yellow dog followed me everywhere, every which way I turned. He was there wagging his tail and slobber coming out of his mouth when he was smiling at me all the time, as if he was saying, thank you, thank you, thank you for choosing me. And jumping up on me, his shaggy, straggly paws on my chest, like he was trying to hug the insides right out of me. And when us kids were playing outside, kicking the ball, he'd chase after it and push it with his nose, push, 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 and getting slobber all over the ball. But no one cared because he was such a funny dog, that dog Sky. That straggly, furry, smiling dog Sky. And I'd call him every morning, every evening, hey there, Sky. And then we have the Red Wheelbarrow poem again. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. Very famous poem. People have wondered, what does that mean? And they discovered that maybe it's just up to the reader what that means to him or her. Then there is Edgar Allan Poe's The Bells. Remember he talked about that, about learning about Edgar Allan Poe in his class. And we have the poem The Kitten, The Black Kitten by Valerie Worth. The black kitten arches stiff, dances sidewise from behind. The chair leaps, tears away with ears back, spins, lands crouched flat on the floor, sighting something at nose level, her eyes round as oranges, her hind legs marking time. Then she pounces, cactus-clawed, upon a strayed strand of fluff. Can anyone believe that she doesn't ask us to laugh? And I feel like I should go back and read Edgar Allan Poe's poem if I'm going to read this whole thing. The Bells by Edgar Allan Poe. Hear the sledges with the bells, silver bells. What a world of merriment their melody foretells. How they tinkle, tinkle, tinkle in the icy air of night, while the stars that oversprinkle all the heavens seem to twinkle, keeping time in a sort of runic rhyme, to the tintinnabulation of the musically wells from the bells, 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 from the jingling and the tinkling of the bells. Hear the mellow wedding bells, golden bells. What a world of happiness their harmony foretells. Through the balmy air of night, how they ring out their delight from the molten golden notes, all in tune. What a liquid ditty floats to the turtle dove that listens while she gloats on the moon. Oh, from out the sounding cells, what a gush of euphony voluminously wells, how it swells, how it dwells. Oh, the future, how it tells of the rapture that impels to the swinging and the ringing of the bells, 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 of the bells, 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 to the rhyming and the chiming of the bells. His poems definitely have rhythm to them. The Eagle by Alfred Lloyd Tennyson. He clasped the crag with crooked hands, alliteration, close to the sun in lonely lands. Ringed with the azure world he stands, the wrinkled sea beneath him crawls. He watches from his mountain walls, and like a thunderbolt he falls. Then we have Black Cat by Christopher Myers. I'm just going to tell you about these last few pages, or you can read them yourself. And I know you won't have a question about it, but if you want to enjoy this, I should show you these. But I also wouldn't want to keep you. We have Black Cat. And there's the last page of Black Cat right here, the second page. And then we have the naming of cats. I'm going to read you this one by T.S. Eliot. I like this one. That's why I want to read it to you. The naming of cats is a difficult matter. It isn't just one of your holiday games. You may think at first I'm mad as a hatter when I tell you a cat must have 3 different names. First of all, there's the name that the family use daily, such as Victor or Jonathan, George or Bill Bailey, all of them sensible everyday names. They are fancier names if you think they sound sweeter, some for the gentlemen, some for the dames, such as Plato, Admetus, Electra, Demeter, but all of them sensible everyday names. But I can tell you, a cat needs a name that's peculiar, a name that is peculiar and more dignified. Else how can he keep up his tail perpendicular, or spread out his whiskers, or cherish his pride? Of names of this kind I can give you a quorum, such as Monkstrap, Quazo, or Coropat, such as Bomballarino, or else Jelly Rum, names that never belong to more than one cat. But above and beyond, there's still one name left over, and that is the name that you will never guess, the name that no human research can discover, but the cat himself knows and will never confess. When you notice a cat in profound meditation, the reason I tell you is always the same. His mind is engaged in rapt contemplation of the thought of the thought of the thought of his name, his ineffable, deep and inscrutable, singular name. This is the one by William Carlos Williams, To a Poor Woman. Oh, sorry, this is just to say. Remember, Jack talked about plums a lot and wrote a poem about a plum. I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were so delicious, so sweet, and so cold. That's a poem. You want it to be a poem? That's a poem. The next one is called To a Poor Old Woman. Last one. Next to last one. Munching on a plum, the street, a paper bag of them in her hand. They taste so good to her. They taste so good to her. They taste so good to her. You can see it by the way she gives herself to the one half sucked out in her hand. Comforted, a solace of ripe plums seeming to fill the air. They taste so good to her. And remember how Jack repeated phrases in his poems to be like William Carlos Williams. Poem, last one. It's actually called Poem. As the cat climbed over the top of the jam closet, first the right forefoot carefully, then the hind stepped down into the pit of the empty flower pot. Wow. I love how she put the author, Sharon Creech, included all these poems at the end. I doubt you'll be ever tested on them or quizzed on them, but I read them in case you were interested. And I loved how Jack became an expert on cats and seemingly now an expert on poetry. And he's got his confidence up and he and his mom are communicating. And he also feels confident enough to sign in school. How cool is that? Do you know sign language? Would you like to learn sign language? I know the letters. I would love to learn sign language. Then you can communicate with everyone. I mean, you can't say to yourself, you can't say, oh, I can't communicate with you because I don't know sign language to someone who is hearing impaired. That would be wonderful. And there are all kinds of reasons to learn sign language. But enough of that. I do want to hear what your opinions are. What do you think of Hate That Cat? I love it, love it, love it. When you email me, let me know. You all have a great day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.